Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. So for today, we'll be discussing about the cognitive development. But before that, let's recall who is the proponent of cognitive development. Okay, so your answer is John Piaget. If your answer is John Piaget, then that is correct. Okay, when we say cognitive development, the proponent is John Piaget, Jean Piaget. So John Piaget, okay, cognitive development, he suggests that our intelligence changes over time. Our intelligence changes over time. So a child, cognitive development is just about acquiring the knowledge the child has to develop or construct a mental model of the world. So the cognitive development occurs through the interactions of the innate capacities and the environment, events, and children, okay, that pass through a series of stages. So according to John Piaget, we have 4 stages under the cognitive development. At ito ay discuss natin today. But before that, okay, let's define some key terms under cognitive development of John Piaget. We have what we call schema. Okay, the schema, ang pinaka-common na term natin dito, ito yung tinatawag nating prior knowledge. Okay, so schema, ang tawag natin dito is prior knowledge. So our schema is referring to the basic mental structure on which all subsequent learning and knowledge are based. Okay, schema, aside from to the basic mental structure, and to prior knowledge, minsan ang definition din na ginagamit dito, it is referring to the building blocks of our knowledge. Yun yung tinatawag nating schema. Okay. However, there are some times na nagbabago, okay, ang schema natin. And that's what we call adaptation. Bakit kailangan magbago? That is because we need to adjust to the world. Okay, so according to John Piaget, okay, intellectual growth is a process of adaptation or adjustment to the world. So this happened through the assimilation, through accommodation, and what we call equilibrium. So what do we mean by assimilation? Let's begin with assimilation. So assimilation as the cognitive process of fitting new information into existing cognitive schema, perception, and understanding. Let's say, for example, yung anak mo is galing sa birthday party, or kayo ng anak nyo, galing kayo sa birthday party. Tapos yung anak mo, nakakita siya na, let's say for example, ano po siya, sino po siya, ano po yun. Okay, let's say for example, ang tinutukoy niya is clown. So bago yung nalalaman niya about clown, nakakita siya na, let's say for example, ang clown may makeup, ang clown frizzy ang hair, or sa gilid lang ang hair, and so on so forth. Okay, so assimilation is the processing of fitting of new information. Okay, let's say for example, biglang lumabas kayo. Okay, pauwi na kayo, nakakita yung anak mo na naka-makeup din at frizzy no hair. Pwedeng sabihin ng anak mo na, ay, clown. Kasi the same. That's what we call assimilation. Fitting the new information into our cognitive schema. Kasi yung schema niya, kapag clown, ganito. Okay, ang assimilation, na-assimilate niya na yan sa lahat, na lahat ng may mukhang ganon, may makeup, at frizzy ang hair ay clown. That's what we call assimilation. However, we have what we call accommodation. Okay, accommodation is referring to the cognitive process of revising existing cognitive schema, perception, and understanding so new information can be incorporated. Ang accommodation, dito na pumapasok yung evaluating and checking. Okay, let's evaluate. Balikan natin. Tama ba yung the way na nag-assimilate? Okay. Let's say, for example, pwedeng sabihin ng tatay na, ay, hindi anak. Okay, that's not a clown. Okay, hindi lahat ng ganon ang hairstyle ay clown, diba? Hindi lahat ng naka-makeup ay clown. Okay, that process is what we call accommodation. Now, we are modifying. Okay, minomodify na natin. Since hindi nagtugma, okay, yung pag-assimilate niya with the schema, okay, that's what we call accommodation. We'll now proceed with Piaget's cognitive development. As to what I mentioned earlier, okay, according to Piaget, we undergo 4 stages of cognitive development. We have the sensory motor, we have the pre-operational stage, the concrete operational stage, and the formal operational stage. Okay, sensory motor happens from birth to 18 to 24 months. Okay, we have the pre-operational 2 years old to 7 years old. We have the concrete 7 to 11. The formal operational stage, which is age 12 and above. Let's begin. Okay, sensory motor stage. From the term itself, sensory. Therefore, we understand the world through the use of our senses. So according to John Piaget, thus the child at the stage learn through senses, motor, and action. Kaya ang mga bata, let's say for example, kung may makita sila, automatic kinukuha nila. Let's for example, nilalagay nila sa mouth nila. Okay, and by that, sa kanila malalaman, ito matigas to, ito pwede tong kainin, ito hindi to pwedeng kainin. Okay, so yan. So the child understand the world through the use of his or her senses. Okay, so at this point or at this stage, okay, a range of cognitive abilities develop. So this include object permanence. Anong sinasabi natin sa object permanence? Actually, below 8 months, okay, the child, wala pa silang object permanence. Na ibig sabihin, para sa mga birth to 7 months, okay, ang naisip nila is out of sight, out of mind. Kapag hindi ko nakikita, hindi yan nag-e-exist. That's for the children. Pero at the age of 8 months and above, okay, there is now the development of what we call object permanence. Object permanence is referring to the concept that an object still exists even out of my sight. Ibig sabihin, out of sight doesn't mean na out of mind. Okay, that's what we call object permanence. So let's say for example, 'di ba, ang mga bata na very let's say for example, 1 month pa lang, or sabihin natin 2 months, or 3 months, or 5 months, okay? Kapag nagbubulag ka sa kanila, okay, peekaboo sa kanila, di ba, masyado silang na-amaze, okay? Kasi para sa kanila, okay, kapag hindi kanila nakikita, nawawala ka. Kapag nagpakita ka, nagugulat sila, tuwa-tuwa sila. Okay, para yan sa mga bata, that is 7 months and below. Okay, however, at the age of 8 months, the child already developed object permanence. Naiintindihan niya na yan, peekaboo na yan. Okay, and even for example, itago mo for example ang cellphone mo sa ilalim ng nakita niya na tinago mo siya sa ilalim ng kumot, malalaman niya pa din na okay, hindi ko nakikita pero alam kong itinago niya. Okay, they already have that object permanence. Yung tinatawag nating object permanence. We also have self-recognition, okay, deferred imitation, and we also have the representational play at this stage. Next, we have what we call the pre-operational stage. Ang pre-operational stage, may hilig na maglaro ang mga bata at the stage. Okay, and also at the stage, we understand the world through symbols and representation. Okay, so toddlers and young children acquire the ability to internally represent the world through language and mental imagery. We use symbols and representation to understand the world. Kaya sa mga bata, let's say for example, kindergarten, preschool, okay, di ba? Ang mga books nila, 2 plus 2, hindi pwedeng 2 plus 2 lang. Dapat may 2 apples plus 2 apples is equals to 4 apples. Okay, so yan, there are symbols and representations in order for them to clearly understand a certain concept. Okay? So, may mental imagery or language na nakalagay. Ang text nila sa mga books dapat malalaki. Okay? Pre-operational stage. Also, let's say for example, sabi ko nga, central to the stage is play. So, the child also understand the world through play din. Okay? So, let's say, for example, the child will be able to understand the concept of family through bahay-bahayan. O, ikaw ang nanay, ikaw ang tatay. Okay? And, gagawa kami ng bahay gamit ang mga kumot. Diba? So, the kumot pillows will serve as, for example, their symbol of home. Okay? Of house. Okay? So, that's what we call symbols and representation. Another, anong tawag doon? Cashier-cashieran, diba? They use symbols and representation in order to understand money. So, let's say, for example, itong dahon na to, 1 million yan. Itong dahon na to, this is 1,000. Itong dahon na to is 100. Itong bato na to, this is 10 pesos. Okay, ayan. So, the child would be able to understand money, okay, through symbols and representations. Okay? Next, also at this stage, okay, one major development is what we call animism, or major characteristic at this stage is animism. What do we mean by animism? This is referring to the understanding that everything has life and has feelings. Everything, okay, lahat may buhay, lahat may pakiramdam. Kaya nga, Okay, let's say for example, ay kaya po siguro wala na yung haring araw kasi tulog na siya. Okay, ngayon gising naman na yung moon. Okay, so binibigyan niya ng buhay yung araw at moon. Or minsan kapag nagdo-drawing sila, merong smiley face. Okay, yan. That's referring to the animism. Kaya minsan nagtatanong may mga parents na nagtatanong na, normal pa ba yung anak ko kasi kinakausap niya yung teddy bear? Okay, again, that's normal. Because if for example, that's on the stage, pre-operational stage, that's normal because according to John Piaget, the child developed animism. Okay, that everything has feelings, that everything has emotions and life. Okay, living or non-living. Next, we have the egocentric, the concept of egocentric. Egocentrism is referring to the concept that the child failed to understand other perspective. Kaya nga egocentric kasi nakafocus lang yung bata with his or her own ego, okay, with his or herself. Okay. Anong halimbawa na to? Let's say, for example, may bata na gustong magpabili, for example, ng isang laruan. Okay, ngayon sinabihan mo na, hindi anak, hindi, wala tayong pera eh. Hindi niya yan maiintindihan. Okay, para sa mga bata, hindi niya naiintindihan. Kaya ang tendency nila is nagtatantrum sila, 'di ba? Sa mall, for example, kung nakakita kayo, nagtatantrum sila. Kahit sabihin mo na, sorry anak, wala tayong pera, hindi nila yun maiintindihan kasi ang focus nila is to satisfy themselves. Gusto ko yon. Hindi din nila naiintindihan na pwedeng napapahiya na yung nanay nila. Okay, hindi nila yan naiintindihan. Kasi nga, ang bata, egocentric. Nakafocus lang sila with themselves. Gets clear. Okay, next. We have this concrete operational stage. For the concrete operational stage, okay, during this stage, the children now begin to think logically about concrete events. Also, at this stage, okay, children are already understand the world through the concrete events. Pag sinabi natin concrete events, this is referring to the materials that are physically present, to the materials na nakikita nila. Also, at this point, okay, children begin to understand the concept of conservation. Ano nga ba ang concept of conservation? This is referring to the understanding that although things, okay, change in appearance, certain properties remain the same. Okay, again, even though certain appearance change, okay, certain properties remain the same. Let's say, for example, let's have a child that is under the sensory motor stage and a child under the concrete operational stage. Ngayon, meron kang baso. Okay, yung isang baso ay tall but skinny. Okay. Meron din namang baso mababa pero medyo mataba. Okay, I mean mataba talaga. One is tall but skinny, glass. Okay, and then we also have short pero matabang glass. Okay. Ngayon, meron kang 500 ml of water. Tapos yung 500 ml of water na yon, nilipat mo doon sa two glasses. Okay, sa baso, nilipat mo doon. Ngayon, if you're going to ask a child that is under sensory motor stage, ano kaya yung isasagot nila? Okay, a child under sensory motor stage. If the child is under the sensory motor stage, according to their senses, understand the world that is according to senses. Kapag tinanong mo, alin kaya doon ang mas matangkad? Ay, mas marami ang tubig. Makikita niya is yung mas matangkad. Kasi based sa nakikita niya, mas mataas yung level of water compare to the small glasses na mataba. Okay, so, para sa kanya, mas mataas yun. However, a child that is under the concrete operational stage, para sa kanya, masasabi niya, okay, na things may change or the water might have changed its appearance. However, the properties is still the same. Kasi nga, 500 ml yon parehas na nilipat doon. So, para sa under the concrete operational stage, parehas lang yung dalawa. That's what we call conservation. So, during this stage, children can mentally reverse things, okay? Let's say, for example, picture a ball of plasticine returning to its original shape. Ayan. During this stage, children also become less egocentric, okay? Bumababa na yung pagiging egocentric nila and they already begin to understand or to think about how other people might feel, okay? Might think and might feel. Okay? Sige. Next, let's proceed to the last stage, which is referring to the formal operational stage. Again, kung babalikan natin, di ba, the concrete operational stage, they would be able to understand concrete concepts. When we say concrete concepts, things that are physically present. However, for the formal operational stage, okay, they carried out on ideas. Okay, they would be able to understand some abstract ideas. Okay, freed from the physical and perceptual constraints. Kahit hindi ko nakikita, okay, I can now understand that specific concept. Okay, so during this time, again, as to what I mentioned, that the individual would be able to deal with abstract ideas. Let's say, for example, they no longer need to think about slicing up cakes or sharing sweats to understand the division and fraction. Okay, kaya na nila yan. Kahit nga siguro mental solving, kaya na nila yan. They can follow, for example, a form of argument without having to think in terms of specific examples. Okay. Also, at this point, okay, adolescents now can deal with hypothetical problems with many possible solutions. Let's say, for example, if we ask them, what would happen if money were abolished in 1 hour's time? Okay, so they could speculate about many possible consequences from about, at this age also, okay, from about 12 years old, children can follow the form of logical argument without reference to its content. Okay, so ibig sabihin, they can now understand abstract concepts. Clear? Okay, again, let's go back. Okay, when we say, balikan natin. When we say Piaget's cognitive development, there are 4 stages. We have the sensory motor stage, we have the pre-operational stage, the concrete, and the formal operational stage. Under the sensory motor stage, ano ang major characteristics? Okay, the child understands the world through the use of his or her senses, motor, and action. What are the things that we develop? We have the object permanence, the self-recognition, and deferred imitation, and representational play. Also, at next stage is the pre-operational stage. The child understands the world through symbols and representations. Okay, ano yung develop? We develop animism. It is referring to the understanding that everything has feelings and emotions. Ang bata at the stage is what we call egocentric. Pag sinabi natin egocentric, okay, they fail to understand the perspective of others. They focus on themselves. Concrete operational stage, the individual in this stage, okay, would be able to understand logically about concrete events. What do we mean by concrete events? This is referring to the concepts that are physically present. Okay, physically present. At this stage, okay, the child developed conservation. Pag sinabi natin conservation, it is referring to the understanding that although things change and shape or appearance, certain properties remain the same. Okay, that's what we call conservation. Lastly, okay, compared to the concrete operational stage, the formal operational stage carried out on ideas. So at this stage, okay, we are now free from physical and perceptual constraints. At this point also, okay, adolescents at this stage or individuals can now follow the form of argument without having to think in terms of specific examples. They can now create hypotheses and provide conclusions. Okay? Sensory, pre-operational, concrete, and formal. Those are the stages of John Piaget. Let's have a review. Okay, a child or a 2-year-old child sees a man who is bald on top of his head and has long frizzy hair on the sides. To his father's horror, the toddler shouts, "Clown, clown." Okay, this shows what? If your answer is letter A and that is correct, this is what we call assimilation. Okay, na-assimilate niya because of, ito yung alam niya, nakakita siya ng clown before, na kapag bald on top, okay, head, bald on top of his head, frizzy ang hair, para sa kanya, it is a clown. So that's what we call assimilation. Next, this is the tendency of the child in the pre-operational stage to only see his own point of view and assume that everyone also has the same point of view as his. We have letter A, animism, B, centration, C, symbolism, D, egocentrism, E. Conservation. Your answer? Okay, your answer is letter D, egocentrism, and that is the correct answer. Next, the child's ability to conceptualize the retention and preservation of the same quantity under various changes is what? Okay, letter A, animism, B, centration, C, symbolism, D, egocentrism, E, conservation. Your answer? Okay, if your answer is conservation, then that is correct. Yung iba, parang nagbago lang yung definition. Bigla, it is referring to the understanding na kahit magbago yung physical appearance, it still has the same quantity. It still have the same quantity. Okay, so I think that's the end of my discussion on cognitive development. I hope it is clear. If you have some questions, please comment down below. Maraming salamat and have a great day.